When you think comic books, you typically think of the DC and Marvel heavy hitters. Wolverine, Spider-Man, Superman, Wonder Woman, Incredible Hulk. The list goes on. But for me, my love of comics is deep-rooted in something that is relatively much more obscure, at least in the realm of comic books. That's because in July of 1994, Malibu Comics released its first issue of Mortal Kombat, Blood and Thunder. And when I eventually discovered that series for myself, just a few short months later, my life was forever changed. 90s kids will understand. I was 6 years old. Mortal Kombat was the hottest thing at the arcade, at the box office, at the action figure aisle of KB Toys. It was the talk of the playground, the school bus, hell, even C-SPAN wanted to talk about it.
I said chocolate chip.
To me, if I may, the nerd that you have made into a hero by encouraging him to buy Mortal Kombat looks to be under 13.
13 years old? Dude, I was like 6. Hey, look, what are you so worried about? I turned out fine. So imagine how I felt on a perfect summer day in 1995 when my mom took me into my local comic shop in Marietta, Georgia, Dr. No's Comics and Games, and I saw for the first time the cover of Blood and Thunder issue number 1, and realizing that on top of the games, on top of the movies, on top of the action figures, Mortal Kombat had found its way to the comic book world as well. You know, it's hard to even believe it, but that was 29 years ago. And to this day, the images in those books remain some of my favorite comic book art of all time. Does that mean objectively that it was always the best art? Probably not. There were probably a few things that the brains behind the operation at Malibu could have done a little bit better. I seem to recall Goro at one point holding a machine gun and talking about getting crazy. And then there's that. So as I said, was there room for improvement? Sure. My personal opinion? I don't really care. In my mind, the pros outweigh the cons. There's still a lot about the series that I really enjoy. And the majority of the artwork in the comics, honestly, to me, it still looks pretty damn cool. Maybe I'm looking at these comics through rose-colored glasses. It's all right with me. I like the way it looks with them on. So with that said, let's get into the timeline of these comics and break down the right way for you to read them from start to finish. Keep in mind that much like the video games and the movies, this comic series has a timeline unto itself. Issue 1 of Blood and Thunder starts off at a familiar site, Shang Tsung's Island, the beginning of the Mortal Kombat tournament, but eventually branches off into a series of events that are non-canon to anything else that takes place throughout the Mortal Kombat universe. There are a total of 27 issues released by Malibu of this comic series. The two main story arcs are Blood and Thunder and Battle Wave. And throughout that story arc, there are several mini-series and one-shots that take place either in between those stories or at some point simultaneously taking place that takes a deeper dive into some of the individual characters to give you a more robust character background. There were some alternate covers. Blood and Thunder issue 1 had a total of 5 different covers. Goro Prince of Pain number 1 had 3 different variations, and Raiden and Kano number 1 had 2 different cover variations as well. There were several original characters that were introduced in this comic series that have only been seen in these comics. Bo, Sing, Sang, Siang, Zagat, Abacus, Lance, Gorbak, Silence, the Combatant, Grum, and Hydro, who actually ends up making an appearance years later in Mortal Kombat Legacy. If you're looking for a more detailed play-by-play of how this story unfolds and eventually ends, I recommend you check out my good friend Tabmock99's video on this series, which I will link in the description below. But I'm going to assume that you don't want a bunch of spoilers and you just want to read the story for yourselves. With that in mind, here's the right way to read the Mortal Kombat Malibu Comics, all 27 issues from start to finish. Start with Mortal Kombat issue 0. Move on to Blood and Thunder. Goro, Prince of Pain, takes place simultaneously with the events of Blood and Thunder. Tournament Edition 1 is the culmination of all the events of Blood and Thunder. U.S. Special Forces takes place in between Blood and Thunder and Battle Wave. Battle Wave, as well as Raiden and Kano, also take place simultaneously. Finally, Tournament Edition Issue 2 is the culmination of all the events that took place throughout the Battle Wave story arc. And you can read the one-shots of Baraka, Kung Lao, and Katana and Melina whenever you please. So guys, that just about does it for me. That was my quick recap of the Malibu Comics Mortal Kombat series. These are comics that have been near and dear to my heart for a very long time, going on 30 years. They were really special to me as a kid. I remember traveling from Nashville to Atlanta with my family on road trips, moving back and forth, and just sitting in the back of the car, reading the comics. And whether we were in Nashville, Atlanta, Phoenix, Arizona, Dallas, Texas, I could just pick up my Malibu comics and go to Outworld or Earthrealm or Edenia or wherever the story might have taken place. I could transport myself there in my mind whenever I wanted to. So even if, objectively speaking, they're not the piece de resistance of all comic books, to me, they'll always hold a special place in my heart. It's a 90s kid thing, I guess. Maybe you just had to be there. Hey, thanks a lot for watching, guys. If you like this video, I've got more history of and retrospective style videos coming soon. If you could, please give it a like, give me a subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you very soon in the next one. Thanks, guys. Take care.